Welcome, everyone. Thank you for your patience if you've been waiting live for us to get started. My name is Kim Marie. I'm with the Evolutionary Astrology Network. And today, myself and some other astrologers are going to do an update on forecasting for the second half of 2022. Before we get started, though, I would really like to say thank you to Sue and Robin, who have been carrying forward these EA Zoom meetings since our wonderful Linda crossed over to Spirit World. So on behalf of all of us, astrologers and attendees, thank you, Sue and Linda. I am just going to say a couple of comments before we're going to have a video presentation by Daniel Fiverson. Most of the July 4th charts for 1776 include three aspects that you will see on your screen. The Mercury gibbous opposition to Pluto, the only two retrograde planets on the July 4th chart. The Sun's last quarter square to Saturn, and of course the Mars last quarter square to Neptune. There are other charts used, and I think many of us will take that perspective. There isn't a right or wrong chart. There's a chart that works for you. When we look at the charts for July 4th, no matter what time is used, the United States is having a Pluto return for the first time in its history. Pluto is back to the late degrees of Capricorn now. And when you look at these three aspects from the July 4th chart, what they tend to show us over the last 240 some years is that the United States in its soul history tends to wave back and forth between inclusive and exclusive principles. If you are familiar with Jeffrey Wolf Green teachings of evolutionary astrology, this is one of the basics to his method of EA. And you can see on your screen here, inclusive principles are about giving, sharing, and including. Exclusive principles are taking, hoarding, and excluding. And you see a few examples here on the bottom half of the screen where, for instance, in the US, we tend to have two major political parties versus other countries that can have multiple parties that then kind of form their own coalitions to govern. You can see how we include versus exclude immigrants. You can look at almost any issue relative to the United States, and it can come to this whole situation of including versus excluding. I think if you live in the United States, if you observe the US right now, you can see that we're really at some choice points in whether, as we go forward with the Pluto return and we start the second cycle of Pluto for our country, new phase to its natal position, we don't know quite for sure where this is going to turn out. It's really bringing this whole issue to a head for us. And I am a US citizen. Thank you, international listeners. We, as the collective in our country, really have to decide how we're going to step up and move forward individually in our groups and as a collective in the country. I'm an optimist. I have hope that we really will recognize we have got to return to these more inclusive principles. However, when we look at Pluto taking 248 years to make a cycle, this isn't anything that will necessarily be solved within the next few years. I have been saying the last decade, this decade, are all about the Pluto return, minimum 20 years, approaching it, leaving it. And so I just wanted to make this point as we go forward with our discussion in looking at the second half of the United States. And I want to say, as we open up and chat back and forth with fellow astrologers, when you speak up for the first time, would each of you please Obviously, share your name. Would you say where you're from? And if you have a website or any specific method of astrology, please feel free to share that so our listeners have their own little introduction to you. So at this point, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to introduce Daniel Fiverson, who I have known for several years in more than just evolutionary astrology. And so, Daniel, if you would share your screen and give us an introduction on yourself, and thank you for preparing this.
Sure. Thank you, Kim, for the introduction. Actually, I'm a little behind the eight ball there. I don't have my solar fire running. Hang on.
No worries, Daniel. I will unmute and chat with you. If I'm remembering correctly, I think you use, and again, this talk does not have to be specific to the United States. It's just hard to miss this US Pluto return if you're involved in astrology in any way. Daniel, aren't you someone who uses a chart other than July 4th for the US?
I do. I use a chart for July 6, 1775, which was the date that the Second Continental Congress passed an act to bear arms, quote unquote, against Great Britain. And it was the day before, on July 5th, they appointed George Washington as a commander in chief and enacted to raise a standing army. And as you know, I've been a student of history, and I've come to believe, and I'm saying that a little facetiously, but when a colony declares war on its mother country, I don't think it's a colony anymore. I want to preface this by saying, astrology works, all astrology works. And like you said, all of the charts for the United States are within a year of each other. The Pluto transit is 9 years long. So they overlap for 8 years. So there's really a lot of agreement about it. But we have already, from my perspective, we have already come through our third Pluto return, which occurred at Christmas of last year. But I just did another talk about it. I've been talking about it really since 2 or 3 years ago. But I have a more general discussion that I would like to do today, because I know we have an international audience. I wasn't really prepared to really just talk about our country, because what I've done is I want to look at, let me answer, do what you asked me to do. I am an evolutionary astrologer, very well embedded in the Jeffrey Wolf Green School of Evolutionary Astrology. I have certainly touched base with a number of other teachers, but I hold that as my core work. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've been here for the last 25 years, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So what I would like to do today is I would like to just walk us through a solar fire animation. And I had this all delineated out. I'm going to see if I can clear some desk space here. Basically, the major players that I see that will unfold over the next 6 months are Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Ceres, Hygeia, the lunar nodes, and Eris. And that's really what we're going to be looking at today. I'm not going to touch on eclipses. I'm not going to touch too much on the retrogrades, except for the ones that are going to be contingent to the charts, the dates that we're going to be looking at. But I think as we see this unfold and we see what's in play, we'll have an idea of what's coming down the road. For what it's worth, I am preparing a talk about the road ahead, and we'll look at the outer planet transits that are coming up really for the next 10 years. You want to make sure that you are in a good frame of mind when you sit down and look at it. We're passing through, it's not just a point in American history. We're passing through a major cycle of planetary change. And I don't want to get into the Hopi mythology. I don't want to digress too much and take up all that time. But we're moving through a tremendous period in history. And everything's up in the air, and the way it's going to fall out really has no parameters on it as yet. expect the unexpected is really the perspective that I have. So that being said, let's dive in. So this is not the chart that I want. This is the chart that I want. All right, so we're going to start with July 1st. And basically, this month begins with two T-squares and a grand cross, excuse me, a grand trine. And you can see that the two T-squares, we have Saturn, which has been squaring Uranus all year, is now also squaring the lunar nodes. And I think that the Saturn square the lunar nodes squaring Uranus is really the base note of this entire year. We are bouncing back between the past and the future. We have a political situation where we have one extreme wanting to really pull things back to the way they were maybe back in 1950 or even earlier than that, and another much more progressive outlook, really want to totally reinvent our future, and we bounce back and forth between it. In the midst of all this, we've had COVID, and COVID is a major player. COVID is not going away anytime soon. We're going to talk about that. I don't want to scare anybody. The good, the cycles are continuing. We're really right now at a wave that's equal to any of the waves we had, except the last Omicron. The good news is that the number of deaths has really dropped off. But COVID is going to be part of our world really for the rest of this year. And again, I don't want to make predictions, but it's here to stay. When I wrote my annual forecast back in January, and I saw Jupiter in Pisces, and its aspects to Hygeia, there was no question in my mind that we were going to see COVID get kicked up again, because COVID, Neptune is pandemics, and Jupiter just makes things bigger. There's a lot of astrologers that look at Jupiter and say, oh, it's a benefic, and it's going to make you rich and wealthy, and all the things that you want. It doesn't necessarily make things better. It just makes things bigger. So we're looking at as this 6-month cycle opens, we're looking at a T-square that's, as I said, a Saturn squaring the lunar nodes, also squaring Uranus. We're reinventing a new future, but we also have a cardinal T-square with Ceres in Cancer, Pluto in Capricorn, and Eris in Aries. And I've been writing about this major square between Pluto and Eris, which hasn't occurred for 2,700 years in signs of Capricorn and Aries. I've been writing about it since 2015. It's still ongoing. It's going to be in orb for another 2 years. And right now, and for the rest of this year, we have Ceres in a square to it. If we know the mythology of Ceres, it's about abduction, it's about rape, it's about loss, it's about nurturing, it's about agriculture, it's about our climate to some degree. All of those things are wound up in this Pluto Eris square. Eris was a warrior goddess. She's blamed really for starting the Trojan War. I don't think she started it. I think that basically I would blame Helen if I had to blame somebody. But at the end of the Trojan War, Aeneas, who was a royal member of the royal Trojan family, sailed to Italy, married into the current lineage in Italy, and it was one of his forebears who literally founded the city of Rome. So I really credit Eris with being responsible for the Roman civilization, which really exists to this day. It still permeates our world. So this is the base note of what we're looking at. As July opens, we also have a water grand trine with Ceres, Neptune, and the lunar south node, and Ceres and Neptune again. Ceres was also raped. Demeter was also raped by her brother Poseidon. Ceres and Neptune. So we're looking at some Ceres can really be looked at as the greatest personal loss, where we've had our greatest personal loss in our chart. For Demeter, it was her child, but for the world, it was their agriculture. It's something that's terribly essential. And if you know, this is what we're dealing with. One of the things that everybody's saying is, when are we going to get back to normalcy? Well, unfortunately, I have to report that that normalcy is never coming back again. The Hopis say that the fourth world is ending this time, even as the fifth world emerges, and that fourth world is gone. And we see the fifth world beginning to emerge around us. I think that Michael was talking about it a little bit before we went on air. We're seeing a power shift, and that's Pluto and Capricorn as well. So these are the things that we are dealing with. So let's animate this chart and kind of step through it a little bit. So on July 3rd, the lunar south node is going to actually perfect to a trine to Ceres. So we're going to, another thing that, to bear in mind, there's people like to think that, trines are good and squares are bad. Trines can, a lot of grand trines in your chart can just make you into a couch potato. Everything just is too easy. And the thing about a trine is that unless you, approach it proactively, it can pass totally unnoticed. If you have a square or you have an opposition, you notice it, and it gets you off the couch. The people who are the most successful, the most productive, are those who have those squares and oppositions in their charts, the yods, the inconjuncts, the things that really, get them to move along, that create the evolutionary growth rather than the comfort and, the things that make life easy. So with Ceres trining and Neptune, again, it's blending these two issues, and I can't help seeing it as anything but a blending of the difficulties that we've been dealing with, the losses we've been dealing with, the betrayals, the boundaries being crossed. All of these things that are in the news are quite evident. If we move ahead, we come up to July 12th, and you can see the chart, the angles changing. On 12th, Ceres also perfects to its last quarter square to Eris. So these dates with the perfections that I'm going to illuminate really are the trigger points. It doesn't mean that the event's going to happen on that day. It could be the day before, the day after. It could be a lunar transit. It could be a solar transit. It's really going to depend on the timing. Timing is very difficult. But these perfections, July 12th and July 13th, Ceres perfecting to the last quarter square to Eris, and Ceres perfecting to a disseminating trine to Neptune. The disseminating trines to me are particularly interesting because disseminating means to spread, means to disseminate, means to distribute something through society. It's a social media kind of a thing. So again, we can expect these things aren't going to quiet down. They're going to spread. I don't want to use like a virus, but that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with viruses. There's no question about it. Whether it's what happened on January 6th, whether it's what's happening in Ukraine, whether what's happening on the Supreme Court, these are toxicities, healing crises that we're going through. In some cases, they just to reference the U.S. Pluto return, and we're also having our U.S. Neptune opposition at the same time. Nobody's really talking about that. The last Neptune opposition occurred in the years before the Civil War, and we know that the Pluto return occurred at the American Revolution. The time that we're passing through is a composite of both of those times in history. But again, the details are going to be different. The process is the same, but the details are different. On the 14th, the trine begins to separate, and we have a mystic rectangle, which it really represents an integration of the 4 points, the two oppositions, the 4 points that are being accessed. And so, we've got the lunar south node Uranus, which one of the major events of the year is Uranus conjunct the north node. And we're going to have Igea on the south node as well, jumping ahead of the story. But with Uranus on the North Node, Uranus is working overtime, really to kind of reinvent. Uranus is the planet of reinvention. You know, Aquarius is the polarity to Leo, and Leo we find our personality, and in our Uranian cycle. You know, certainly with all the Saturn cycles that work within it, is our reinvention of ourselves almost every 28 years. We go through different lifetimes, if you would, within a single lifetime, different ways of expressing ourselves as we age and we mature and we learn and we grow. And in a mundane chart, Uranus does the same thing. It is reinventing us collectively. And because we are a plurality, we are seeing the voices of that plurality. Neptune's in Pisces, the collective, this collective delusion and collective beliefs. People act according to what they believe. What they believe may not be true, but they still act on it. QAnon being a perfect example, or Pizzagate. The idea that Hillary Clinton was running a pedophile ring from the back of a pizza parlor, but people seized upon this because it fit their belief system. We're dealing with a clash of beliefs as much as anything else. But Uranus here on this North Node is clearly working towards a different future. It's just the other thing about Aquarius but Uranus being the ruler of Aquarius, is that one third of the people at any given time want things to change by being progressive and going forward. But there's also a segment of the population that wants things to change by going back to the way they used to be. Thank you, John Roberts. Thank you, Clarence Thomas. And then there's roughly a third of the population that's somewhere in the middle, and just kind of maybe flip-flops back and forth. And the other opposition here is Ceres and Pluto, which I kind of described. Pluto was the rapist of Persephone. Hades was the rapist of Persephone. But the interesting part of that story is that when she became the queen of the underworld, she actually enjoyed it. She embraced it. She found new power as a woman rather than as a child. So, there's lots of stories here that tell us that what we're going through are leading to a tremendous, cycle of growth that are going to bring us forward. But it's growth through pain. We learn through direct emotional experience, and we are having those direct emotional experiences. From the 17th.
Daniel, this is Kim Marie. We're going to have to ask you to speed up a little bit, because if we got 6 months to go, and we want to hear from others as well.
Okay.
So how many charts do you have?
Well, I've got only one chart, but I've got lots of different dates. So I'll edit the dates we're going to talk about.
Okay.
I'll just skip ahead. Sure, it's fine. On July 21st, Eris is going to station retrograde. She stations direct every January and retrograde every July. Her retrograde this year was only days before the January 6th. Last year was only days before the January 6th Capitol riot. Got Uranus also stationing retrograde on August 4th. I'm not there. Uranus will station retrograde on August 4th, exactly conjunct the South Node. The South Node will also be stationed. That's another interesting condition. We can leave that for another discussion. When the nodes station, it's like a drilling down. It's like holding a magnifying glass up over a leaf until it bursts into flame. And the eclipses are always stationed nodes as well. Let's see here. Skipping ahead through August, we see that the T-squares turn into a grand cross. And the grand cross, again, is going to pull all of these elements that we've been discussing together, going to integrate them all. Saturn, Uranus, the North Nodes, and Ceres are all going to be working. Hygeia is going to be conjunct the South Node. I would suggest that we're going to see another serious wave of COVID. The South Node is the past, and Hygeia is all about proactive healthcare. The healthcare system in the United States needs to be totally reworked. It's part of what's going on. The worst thing that can happen to you if you live in our country is if you get sick. There's nothing. There's no. Bankruptcy is not as painful or as problematic as entering the healthcare system in the United States. It's an abomination. And you can see that the Red Cross will persist really through the month of September and into October. At the same time, we've got trines from Ceres to Eris and Pluto to Uranus, really amping up the issues. I'm looking through my notes here to jump ahead. Just bear with me.
That's fine. What I actually had done too is I went through and did a list of what I thought would be chart dates that we could just put up a chart and have comments from everybody. And we can go back to
that would be good. If you would like to do that, we can just jump ahead. But I think you get the gist of where I'm going with this. We're having these experiences because that's the way we're going to get it. We're just not getting it, collectively. And if things are going to get worse, the Supreme Court has an agenda. The Republican, the GOP, the right wing has been organized since the Reagan years. The left is just kind of waking up. We were, really quite late in coming to the party, but they're way ahead of us. The Koch brothers, America First, all these organizations are totally networked with each other. It was very easy for Donald Trump to put together that riot because all of those groups have been in communication with each other and are working as a single entity, and they have for years. And he just harnessed it. So I'm going to turn this back over to you, Kim. You can take it forward.
Sure. Fascinating though, Daniel. I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, hold on just a second here. And I am going to try and figure out, okay, so get myself out. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of, oops, no, I did something. Did I? Okay, hold on just a minute, everybody. I'm going to bring up another chart for you here, and then we'll carry on a discussion from that. But hold on just a second. Well, here it is. Okay, so can somebody tell me, can you see this on your screen?
Not yet. I think you ended your share, so I think you need to share.
So let me bring my share back again, everybody. Okay.
You got it.
Okay, here you go. So I think what I will do for the rest of the panel is I'm going to just bring up a couple of dates, kind of like what Daniel was doing, but just allow everybody to have their input to it. And because probably there's a few astrologers that use July 4th, 76 charts, we'll save those towards the end when we get towards the USA midterm elections and that third Pluto return. Yes, we have the second one if you use July 4th coming up July 10th. And by the way, for the rest of the panel, if you want any dates, if you have any slides you want to show, just let me know and we will definitely bring any of those up, especially if you like to look at things from an international perspective or another country's perspective. As Daniel was starting to talk about with the Uranus conjunction to the North Node, the other thing that we've got going on here is we're literally going to have a triple conjunction between the North Node, Mars, and Uranus. And I've got just a few dates up here because the inner planets are going to start moving through Leo at the same time period. They're going to square the nodes, specifically Sun and Mercury, from Leo opposing Saturn. And so here again is that Saturn squared the nodes that Daniel talked about as a base node. And I think that he described it very succinctly in that, we as societies maturing, and I think this can, even though this chart's done for Washington, D.C., all over the world, we as societies, Saturn square the nodes, are having to mature and decide whether we're going to move forwards or we're going to move backwards. So I would really like to open it up to someone else on our panel with this chart. Has anybody been looking at the end of July and through August and would like to share any comments or ideas?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's most noticeable is the Uranus, the Mars-Uranus conjunction there. Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction in the what chart is this? Just the event chart, okay.
I just did the chart for Washington, D.C. just for simplification.
Okay. Well, that, I mean, wow, that's very potent. Does that contact anything in the US chart? I wonder.
Oh yes, definitely.
Yeah.
We can do that. Do you? Who am I speaking to? Please
Michaela.
introduce yourself.
Sorry,
Hi,
I'm
Michaela.
sorry. Yeah, Michaela Villiers-Kendall, and what else was I supposed to say? I forgot what else I was supposed to tell you. Never mind, that's who I am.
Where are you, Michaela?
Where are you
sorry,
from?
yeah. I'm in Bordeaux, but I'm from London originally, and so I'm in Bordeaux, France. So I'm in Europe.
Okay. Oh,
And
good.
yeah.
Thank you for a different perspective. I mean, I can do a bi-wheel with the US chart if you'd like me to.
Yeah, that would be interesting, actually. Yeah.
Do you have a specific chart that you use?
I just use the Sibley chart, but if anyone else wants to use something else.
Okay, so hold on. I'm afraid of cutting out of some things, Nura. I'm going to show everything just like you did, okay? And so hold on just a second. And I will get my Zoom charts up for today. Okay, how come those didn't come up?
You may have
Okay,
to end your share and start it again. Are you sharing a different application?
Fine, open and view. It's just opening up one chart.
In SolarFire or in your
in SolarFire, in SolarFire.
Okay, so you need to unshare your PowerPoint presentation and then share SolarFire.
Okay. So share screen. Okay. And so let's see if it will open up these various charts for us. Okay.
There you go.
Let's wait a minute right here. Okay, so, I see. I think I have to choose them all. Okay. Now it should do them. There we go. Okay, Michaela, do you use the Sibley chart?
Yes.
Do you have a specific chart that you use? All right, so hold on just a second here. And we will pull that up for you with this and view. Okay, can we see this better? All right, is it showing up?
It's a little small.
We're just seeing the current chart preview, not the bi-wheel.
Okay.
It's just the Sibley chart.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
And so is there something else I have to do then, Sue, to get to
That's
to
it.
show this?
You
We're done.
you may only be showing one chart at a time in, yeah, you may have to reshare it.
Here we go. All right,
Perfect.
learning
Yeah.
this now. Yes, so here is, of course, one of the popular charts for the USA to Sibley chart in the afternoon of July 4th, 1776. So here you go, Michaela, looking at everything, if you'd like to make some comments on that. And anybody else.
Well, I mean, Saturn yeah, Saturn is coming up to conjunct the moon. That's very noticeable. So that's pulling the moon in Aquarius. It's pulling that into anything. It's revolutionary, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you see
Yeah.
Mercury is up here in
Mhm.
Leo, you know, being ready to, I'm trying
Yeah,
to see if I can
exactly.
figure out
Oh yeah,
how to
there it is. Yeah, wow.
use
Yeah, almost exact.
this. Yes,
opposition.
exactly. So if you see the Mercury that is, you know, square the transiting nodes, it's pulling, Saturn's pulling in the moon. The various
Yeah.
times on the July 4th chart, 76, you know, the moon varies in the third decan of Aquarius. And so any of those charts are pulling in the Saturn square the nodes and pulling in the Mars Uranus too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Can I,
to
can I
me,
say something?
go
Can I-
for it, Daniel.
Okay. In a mundane chart, the 10th house is, for us, would be the presidency. The first house is the people at large. So we've got, oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at Eris, but Eris is in the inner wheel. Never mind, hold on. Let me just see if there is a validation here. Well, we've got Jupiter is square. Jupiter is squaring both Venus and Jupiter. Venus being the ruler of the 10th house, Jupiter being the ruler of the first house. So we're having these crises, you know, about our presidency, about the government itself, and the crises that the people at large themselves are all experiencing and going through.
Mhm.
Crises of the people with the resources. If you look at these Taurus planets in the 6th as well with this chart.
Yeah, exactly.
I just expect this whole latter part of July and early part of August to be full of more surprises and unexpected events. You know, with
Mhm.
Mars Uranus, it could be Earth events. You know, it's Taurus. It's
Yeah. It's like the new revolution, though, isn't it? Really, everything's getting churned up, like Daniel was saying. It's getting thrown into the air. And it's going to get worse before it gets better, because it's going into antithesis. It's going into chaos, because the old structures are being shattered, really. I mean, it's not just America, obviously, it's worldwide, but as Daniel said, it's the old empire, you know, the remnants of the Roman empires is being shattered. So it has to be, because you know, and that Chiron, 20 degrees Aries, that's getting, what was that you said, Daniel, was it's Ceres is squaring from Cancer, that Chiron,
I'm sorry.
Ceres is squaring Chiron. That Chiron's being picked up by those transits you were saying, 20 degrees Aries.
Yeah, I wasn't actually looking at Chiron, but this is the country's having its Chiron return in this chart.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Wow, yeah, you're right. Wow.
Yes,
Yeah,
the Mars Uranus combination in any sign has potential to be extremely volatile. You know, in Taurus, we may think that somehow it's going to be grounded, but it's people grounded in what's important to them. That's what we're experiencing. People are getting totally grounded in what's important to them, what's personally important for their own survival. And that's, that's a very wide spectrum of expression. It's the Supreme Court on one hand, and it's it's people like us who are totally disgusted with all of it, on the other hand. So
Government, yeah, all everything, yeah, everywhere.
right.
Yeah. That Venus ruling the, as you say, the midheaven and the 11th, and that's the people too, the 11th, isn't it? And it's being sextiled by the Uranus-Mars North Node conjunction and trine by the South Node. So yeah, it's like revolution's coming back again this time, and this time it's internal, but it's worldwide, isn't it? Really, there's going to be revolutions all over the place. But yeah, wow. Intense.
Cathy, Nura,
interesting.
anybody else?
Yeah, a couple things. I in the 7th house, also is the house of open enemies. And as we watch Mars continue on its path into Gemini and its retrograde period in Gemini, it's going to be affecting the Mars of the United States in the house of open enemies. Which is other countries that we have to work with and stuff that are really our enemies. So I feel that's very important also. I also feel that part of the message we're receiving is the focus on humanity and the focus on the community because of Saturn, the maturing part, etc. in Aquarius. It's no longer about me or I'm the leader or I am, et cetera, et cetera. It's about I need to mature, say the country or everybody, their thinking into taking care of humanity and not how much money I have and, am I a leader or this type of thing. And Saturn has taken us into that ruling Capricorn before Pluto actually goes into Aquarius. It's getting us ready. And right now with Uranus conjunct that North Node and Mars there, it's kind of emphasizing that the revolution part that you spoke about is about humanity and community, and we all are one kind of a thing. And then
values,
Yeah,
That's where I was going to go too, Cathy. Like with the Mars, thinking about the double signatures with the Chiron return in Mars sign Aries, and just what I'm observing with the gun violence and also just the polarity of opinion around guns in the country. Like that's just one of those inclusive, exclusive polarities that you brought up, Kim, where it seems like people are, for the most part, just being pushed to one side or the other. I do believe there's a lot of people in the middle and able to listen to all of the sides and all of the different reasons. And I think especially since Mars is going to be stationing retrograde in Gemini during this or just after this Mars return, I think we're going to be having this conversation for a really long time. We'll have Mars in Gemini for about 9 months. So from October through to the first part of 2023, I think it'll be a really long-term conversation.
And I do believe, looking at the humanity kind of part, that kind of genius energy, to be looking at that, in my own opinion, when I saw the first little glimmers of, okay, we're starting to get the humanitarian part, was Ukraine. Because before Ukraine, there was all this very loud, mass shots, whatever going on. Ukraine hit, and all of a sudden, everyone's focus was on the people of Ukraine. It was on the humanity, feeding them, making them safe and everything. And I thought to myself, that's the first glimmer of Saturn in Aquarius preparing us for Pluto as it moves into Aquarius, cleaning up all this stuff over the last couple of years and making it prominent for the good of humanity. Just my thoughts.
Yeah,
Nice comment. Yes, I agree.
that's all that Aquarian stuff sort of coming in, but it's sweeping sweeping through first, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Big time. I mean, the markers, the 2020 Saturn Pluto conjunction was the big marker, wasn't it, in Capricorn? And that degree that was squaring that Chiron as well in Aries, and That's picked up again that degree, and it's still, it's still within orb, the Pluto. So that's still working out before, as you say, Pluto goes into Aquarius for the first time next year. And I think we're saying that, yeah, exactly. So, and the Pluto in Aquarius, of course, will echo the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees Aquarius in the winter solstice of 2020. So it's like we are being prepared, and it's all Aquarian, but that means a lot of upheaval, because we have a lot of outworn structures, as I said, and rules. A lot is around rules, isn't it? Have you noticed that? It's outworn systems and rule books that really should be thrown out, because where have these rules come from? They're outdated, but we're still sticking by them.
Yeah. I like to refer to the Pluto return here in the United States as an upgrade. It's like we don't have to throw everything out. We don't have to be, violent and crazy. There's some things that need upgraded, but that's true throughout the whole world.
Exactly. It's not just that. Yeah.
Just upgrade.
Well, a lot. I mean, the outworn rules that, and yet we're afraid. It's as though we're afraid to move forward. We were just about to tackle climate change, and suddenly, maybe unconsciously, or maybe the fact was we weren't ready to tackle it because we were nowhere near, and frankly, it wasn't going to happen. It was all lip service all over the world. And now we're being forced. I think you said that, Daniel, didn't you? We're being forced into it, whether we like it or not, but the hard way now, because we can do it.
I think it's important to understand the real nature of Aquarius and Uranus. Aquarius is the sign that follows Capricorn. In Capricorn, everything gets structured, gets crystallized, gets stuck. Uranus comes along and shakes that crystallization up. It disrupts it, it interrupts it, so something else can take its place. And that's what we're moving through. Uranus can be, quite disruptive. If you have the Uranus transit, it can really knock you down. So and that's what we're going through. It's not it's not just all the stuff everything's going to be peaches and cream. It may get to that, but we're gonna have to milk some cows to get there.
Exactly. And another comment, if I can, with the Pluto. I mean, Pluto basically is showing us all the things that we need to fix before Pluto moves into Aquarius and fixes it for the good of all humanity or whatever. We can't fix things if we can't see them. And so it's like Pluto's throwing everything, especially at this last minute of its cycle, in our face so that we know what it is that needs to be changed as Pluto moves into Aquarius. And it's not easy. It's like there's a whole bunch of stuff under those rugs and behind those closed doors.
Yeah, the rugs. I was just about to say, I must have got your thoughts. Rugs being pulled all over the place. Which here goes. You thought you were standing on that one. Well, it's gone.
Pluto gives us plenty of warnings. It's like, can you hear me now? And we ignore it. Once, twice, three times. By the fourth time, it just pulls the rug out from under us and say, "Do you hear me now?"
Right. Exactly.
Well, Uranus is like it's going before it, isn't it? It's sort of it's got the machete going ahead, cutting down the jungle, and then Pluto's going to come around as the steamroller if we haven't cleared up our act.
Uranus is kind of like the constant of change, and Pluto is transformation, and they both change a lot of things, but in a different way.
Exactly.
One of the things that Jeffrey Wolf Green always used to say, all human consciousness is invested in security. How many of us have the courage to be entirely Uranian and completely break free? Right. And so what we're having, I think, a lot with this Pluto return in the United States is it's, you said it before, it's pulling that rug out from underneath us. And the tendency is to want to be secure again. And so we reach back, which we can see about, at least maybe half the population starting to do in some way, maybe less than that. But you know, he would talk about uniform evolution and cataclysmic evolution. And I think what the Pluto returns are giving us is cataclysmic evolution. And again, it's not going to happen in 6 weeks. It's not going to happen in a year. And I think with this Mars-Uranus North Node conjunction coming up, tying in so closely to the Saturn-Uranus last quarter squares, you know, it's quite possible that there is cataclysmic evolutions that we're in the midst of. And again, they may not always look pretty, as many of us have said.
Right.
But
January,
it's,
yeah.
Go ahead,
January 6th
Daniel.
is the perfect, January 6th is the perfect example.
yes. Yes,
You
exactly.
know what?
And also the Supreme Court knocking down Roe v. Wade. It's exactly, it's exactly the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was interesting on January 6th that Mars going into 0 degrees Taurus exactly when they charged. I mean, and that obviously is echoing that 0 degrees Aquarius, the ingress again that Jupiter and Saturn did, and then Pluto is going to do. It's like it's all, you didn't, you know, people don't realize what's going on under the surface, and then suddenly you shockingly do. Yeah. Exactly. But we are being woken up to quite, you know, it's waking up is hard to do.
We're being woken up to a
rosy.
complete,
Oh, isn't this lovely all of a sudden?
being
And
No,
woken
it's
up to a
quite hard because
complacency.
we're not, yeah, we didn't realize a lot of stuff.
Yeah, what
We
affects
have
the
to.
United States affects the whole world.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
now what's going on in Ukraine,
Well-
as you say, war bubbling around. And I was looking at NATO's chart. I don't know how to get it up, but I did look at it.
I was
And,
going to say, I can bring
how do you
up
got that? Yeah.
the chart
Great.
if you can
great.
tell me.
Okay.
Okay,
tell you
so hold on
detail.
just a sec. And
Great.
so give me a birth date.
Yeah, it's the 4th of April, 1949 at 8:38 BAT, it says, District of Columbia. Anyway, Washington, D.C. 4th of
8:38,
April,
8:38
Washington, D.C. Well, it says
a.m.
BAT. What does that mean? I suppose. Well, I mean, the ascendant is, see, I haven't got the chart. The ascendant was in Virgo, I remember that. Because I did the solar chart first, but then I managed to get the natal chart. What it says is 8:38 BAT, which is -3 hours. So I don't know, that's, anyway, it's Washington, D.C.
Okay, so let's see if this is the chart that you're familiar with. Hold on
Okay.
just a sec.
Was Virgo rising. So I don't know why it's done that. It must have, oh, it's done -3 hours. I don't know why it did that. That's Astrological I used.
Okay, so we have to go, we'd have to change the time here
Yeah,
and
it's got BAT. What is that actually? BAT. Does anyone know what BAT is?
it's just giving us the time zone.
Oh, yeah, I know, but I mean, I don't know what time zone that is.
Yeah, so hold on a second here and let me see if I can find the B. Got it.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's -3. Okay, so let's try this one.
It's like the middle of
Nope.
Virgo.
No,
ascendant.
no. Let's let that go because we'll spend too much time trying to discuss
You
something
can look at the solar chart.
in that regard. We might have to just move on from that, okay? You can make your comments if you want. What I wanted to
Okay.
do is draw up start in with the eclipses, okay? And I think what I will do here is I'll just stick with Sibley for now, and we'll move on to one of the charts that everybody is totally talking about quite a bit. Hold on a second. Okay, trying to get this to do this there. Okay. Here is the lunar eclipse on November 8th. Those of you outside the United States, in the United States, where we have elections forever, one ends, the next one starts. I'm envious of other countries in some ways. Our midterm elections are November 8th this year, which is the polls open an hour after this lunar eclipse. And so again, just for simplicity's sake, I stayed with the Sibley chart. So we're just working with that one. It's not the chart I use, but I am open to all USA charts. Just wanted to point out for you that this lunar eclipse, it's a south node lunar eclipse. That means the sun is on the south node. That means that we were going backwards. We're having to deal with the past one more time. This lunar eclipse is taking place at 16 degrees Scorpio, Taurus. Here's the moon replacing Uranus on the midterm elections. For me personally, I have just been saying, and again, it's my reference is coming from the July 4th Pluto returns, that this entire year is just a wild ride full of surprises, and whatever you're reading in the news today may or may not be accurate tomorrow. Whatever the political pundits are saying traditionally, for those of you outside the US, traditionally, whichever party has the presidency, they lose seats to the opposite party in the midterms. Again, US only has two political parties, basically. And so there's been this talk all along that, you know, Democrats are going to lose big. Well, what have we been hearing in the last few days to a week? Oh, maybe that might be changing. I don't know if anybody's going to know what it's going to be like, because Mars goes stationary retrograde 25.5 Gemini, October 30th. You know, so basically just a few days, a week, a little over a week, Mars goes retrograde. And it's going to be so close to the natal US Mars on July 4th that, again, here's more surprises along the way. And we still have transiting Uranus at 18 degrees. I'll try and get my animation on again for everybody. We still have Uranus at 18 degrees, still with an orb of squaring the nodes, having fairly tight square to the lunar eclipse, to Venus, Mercury, Uranus. Whew. Who has a comment?
It's a little violent.
Who dare
Anybody
say? I don't want to say it. No, that Pluto to square the nodes. I mean, when I had to say, when Trump actually won, he won with Mars had gone onto 0 degrees Aquarius, and then the insurrection took place on with Mars in 0 degrees Taurus. Well, Pluto's going to be, in 2024, it's going to be going into, I think it goes in for the last time in November 2024.
It does.
So is it the last time? Yeah. So it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it. We could have a world war and Donald Trump as president. Wouldn't that be a hoot?
I don't see Donald Trump being reelected. I will.
I know it sounds unlikely.
From my perspective, if he ends up being the nominee, it will galvanize people more than it did in 2020. because they
Yeah.
can see everything that he did in the 4 years in office. They're
True.
starting to recognize the concentration of conservatives on the Supreme Court, the gutting of, climate change laws,
Yeah.
etc. I think it will just galvanize the people if Donald Trump is on the ticket. I don't see him on the ticket. I think that, go ahead,
Marie,
Daniel.
do you see any way that he's not going to be indicted before that?
I think his indictment is going to entirely depend upon the chart we're looking at, how the midterms go. Because if the House goes to the Republicans in the midterms, then the January 6th Select Committee is history. If the Democrats hold on to the House, they'll keep that committee going and put enough pressure on the Justice Department that they've got to start doing something. They may not get to Trump, but they're going to start getting to his lawyers. They're going to start getting to his hitmen, as I call them. There will be some of them that are going to take the fall for him. I don't think Merrick Garland, our head of our Justice Department in the U.S., I don't know if he has the balls to charge Trump with anything.
Yeah.
Trial of the century. It would come to pass.
It's another civil war, isn't it? Basically, because I think you were saying, Daniel, about that Neptune opposite the Neptune position in the Civil War. It's now in Pisces. It was in Virgo back then. So it's sort of it's come around again.
I do think that the United States is in the middle of a civil war. We're just not doing it with guns.
It could be.
Yeah, we're not doing it yet.
Civil war,
Yeah.
a world war.
Yeah.
The country's so divided.
I personally don't think that he will ever stand he will ever face the judge. I think he has already made plans to leave the country.
I do too.
Saudi
agree.
Arabia, and the problem is that he becomes a martyr, and martyrs are even more powerful than a deposed president.
If someone doesn't take him out. I would
Yeah.
like
He
to
seems to be one of those charmed people, doesn't he? I mean, he's got that lunar eclipse, and that Mars is, of course, that Mars of the American chart is conjunct.
Susan and I joke that he's the Antichrist.
He's
Maybe it's not.
I said he was the Antichrist. No, he's the false Antichrist. That's what
and I never believed in an Antichrist before.
I think he has the energy of a cult leader, like Jim Jones, etc. He gets people, he has that energy.
Yeah. No, there was I brought it up before the American election panel, and I brought up, I thought it was amusing, that Nostradamus had said this prophecy that really sounded like Donald Trump, but he called him the false Antichrist. And Stacey said, no, he is the Antichrist. He is. But who knows? I mean, the false Antichrist, then it makes you think, who's the real Antichrist? He's sort of a pale shadow of the real one. Personally, I think Putin's obviously takes that honor as the Antichrist. He's filling the role, isn't he? I mean, he seems to enjoy it. What do you think?
I will say that, Trump and Putin are both the Pluto and Leo generation. And I mean, no disrespect to any Pluto Leos. I married one, okay? But, they are the extremes of the distortions of the Pluto Leo generation, those alpha males.
Yes, the patriarchy.
Yeah, but they're still, they're not going to live forever. And I have hope with the younger generations that, the Pluto Libras, the Pluto Scorpios, people sometimes want to lambaste, our couch potato kids, but I run into a lot of them that already get in consciousness what so many in the Pluto Leo generation are just having to learn. You don't get to be on top of the pyramid, so to speak, in the EA terms. And so I just, here, and excuse me, I have too many planets in the ninth house, okay? It's hard to get the philosophy out of me, but the planet will not survive if we don't return to more natural principles. Someone on Facebook just, wrote something about overpopulation, and I said, Mother Nature is going to have the last word. It just, again, may not be pleasant. I think that the Trumps and the Putins are going to eventually fade away. It might be the beginning of the end for them because people get tired of that. Somebody, whoever mentioned it earlier, I thought, well, why didn't we react to the Afghanistan war like we are to, the bombing of Ukraine? And I think it's just so much that we're starting to recognize we're a global community, and we just can't keep playing as much of these games. It's good. I still think it's going to be some painful surprises to get there, but in the long term, we have to protect our sandbox.
Sure.
I'd
It's
like
the
to-
last stand of the patriarchy, isn't it, really? What's
It
happening,
is.
but it's the last stand.
I
But,
think I think that's the series message, that we need to nurture ourselves.
yeah.
And that's something that we've lost. We in the United States especially, we lived in a fix me a world where, if something goes wrong, you go to the doctor, you go to the psychiatrist, you go to the dentist, you go to somebody to get fixed. We don't take care of ourselves. Our healthcare, that's why I say our healthcare, system is an abomination, because it's filled with people who did nothing for their whole lives, and they ended up, in dire straits.
Mhm.
I'd like to
Yeah.
say something about this chart.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I think that the nodal axis, again, that was picked up, it's picked up by the Aquarian transits, and it still is. And the planetary nodes of Neptune are there, aren't they, in Aquarius? So and that was, as I've said that before, that the beginning of World War One, Uranus, I think, was on the planetary nodes of Neptune, and I think it was at 6 degrees. I'm not sure, 9, maybe 9, but it was there. It was on the south node of the chart, the Sibley chart. Yeah. So and it's coming up again. So America is at the heart of this transition of going into Aquarius. And as I said before, although the role of the imperialism role is over, because the imperialism is over, just like you said, Daniel, it still has, it's a flag bearer of freedom, and that's what that's what it has to rise to now, and it's happening already. I think it's like we're realizing actually the free world is at stake here, and there's going to be a tussle over it. But it means imperialism is over. So I said that before.
Cathy, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes. And it's not in this chart, but Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith are conjunct in Cancer at this chart on November 8th, and the eclipse, and they're at the polarity point of Pluto, basically. They're opposite Pluto. And those two seem to show up quite a bit through the whole fall and into December, being a polarity point of Pluto, squaring Eris, and that's all feminine. And so I think this whole Wade versus Roe and the whole women standing up for women's rights, and they're trying to take them away from us, etc., is going to be a real prominent thing prior to this election and after, because it is a polarity point. It's making a cardinal T-square. Be Pallas Athene feminine, Black Moon Lilith feminine, squaring Eris, and Eris is squaring Pluto.
Even the animus issues, which come from, Cancer, Capricorn, and the fact that we're already hearing news in this country that I think it was Alabama now wants to make it a felony if parents give their children gender suppressing drugs.
Yeah,
And so this
That was-
whole, the whole trans issue, the LBGT issues, all of that
All of
all
it.
falls into the same planets you're talking about, Cathy.
Yeah.
Mm,
Pallas at this eclipse, Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith are both at 23 degrees Cancer, the
Mm.
mother energy.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's opposing Pluto by 3 degrees. And then all of that is Eris.
and squaring Eris, as Daniel
Yeah,
said.
at this eclipse,
Squaring.
on
Right.
the full moon
Wow.
eclipse.
And
Um,
if you want to, if we look at this lunar eclipse, this is the power grabs.
Yeah,
I always say Scorpio, power over, power under.
Yeah.
And Taurus is the self-empowerment rather than playing those games. But we know with distortions of patriarchy and consensus world, this is the big power grab. So,
Yeah.
hold on. Mhm. Anybody else comments on this chart?
we could probably talk about it for a couple hours, but
Yeah, I mean, what
no,
else?
that's kind of the main, we hit the main things.
Yeah, I mean, but that
I'm gonna-
Pluto is the square that is going to conjunct that south node, so more and more. So obviously that's on the way. And
Mhm.
that is going to rake up the past, isn't it? It's going to churn up everything. But now we're seeing people are realizing they have to take responsibility, that they can't just trust their big father figures of governments, because now we're finding out all sorts of things, as I said before, that we didn't know, and that we really should have taken some responsibility for, and that we're being shocked about the attitudes we didn't even know were there. And we were just, as you said, Daniel, complacent. I think we got complacent. And that has to change, because the people now do need to take responsibility and demand truth out of their governments, instead of all the lies that we've been fed, Cancer, all these years.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's bring up one more chart, unless somebody has final comments on this. All right, hold on just a second here. I feel like I don't need to necessarily bring up the Pluto return charts, because we're, pretty much they're showing up on every chart we're looking at. So hold on just a second here. But I'll stay with the Sibley, but I want to bring up, we've spoken some about the Mars retrograde, but I think we should bring this in just a little bit more. Here is the chart for December 8th. I did it by will with the Sibley, okay? Sag rising for July 4th. But here's when the Mars retrograde is opposing the sun on December 8th. And looky here, full moon. Just, before that. And
Yeah.
so the moon gets pulled into this entire opposition for a day or two as it goes over Mars. And then this opposition pulls in this natal US Neptune in Virgo, as well as pulling in the transiting Neptune in Pisces. And we haven't spoke too much about this, but Neptune has, what did it make? 3 oppositions to the natal Neptune in Virgo. And I think it made 5 squares, last quarter squares to that natal Mars in Gemini. So in addition to this Pluto return that we have going on, we have our beliefs, and our disillusions on some of the deepest levels all shook up. And to me, another way that I will see this whole Neptune opposition and even Mars, this whole T-square that happens right here is just the shock that's going on for the souls wanting to go back to the past. The consensus, yesterday was better than today. And I think there's just some, even religious as well as spiritual wake-up calls that's going on for a lot of the populace in the United States. Wait a minute, as some people were saying earlier, is this really who we are as a country? And broader, is this who we are as a planet, extending it to the war in Ukraine? Because this opposition, on a full moon, it will still be taking place all over the world. Let me be quiet. Comments?
Yeah, one comment. Okay, so that Black Moon Lilith and Pallas Athene, very feminine stuff, is at 26 degrees Cancer. Pluto's at 26 degrees Capricorn. Polarity of the Pluto in this is that feminine, and it's on Mercury, which is at 24 Cancer. So both Black Moon Lilith and Pallas Athene, and like I was saying, I think the women are really going to raise up. I think the women, because our rights are being taken away, and that whole thing is what's going to really be what I want to say on the top agenda everywhere. Because at this time, which is what, the day before the full moon or whatever, yeah, they're going to be sitting right on Mercury opposite Pluto by degree.
Yeah.
Squaring errors.
Is that a lunar eclipse on the 8th of December? Oh, I got that right.
No,
So-
no, the lunar eclipse is November 8th.
Okay.
The chart we just looked at.
Okay.
Yeah.
The solar eclipse is October 25th.
Yeah, this was just the full moon is the day, the day before this chart. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, hours before.
There you
When's
go.
the eclipse when's the eclipse that's at 16 Taurus then? The lunar
That's
eclipse.
October 25th. Oh, no, October 25th, the solar eclipse is at 2 degrees Scorpio. The lunar eclipse on November 8th, the midterm elections.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got
That's,
December.
yes, that is
Okay.
the
Of course, it
16
would be
degrees.
November. Of course. Okay. Right. Oh gosh.
Well, thank you, Cathy. So it just sounds like, we're going to have the last 3 months of the year, basically with Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith as part of the conversation, and
Yeah.
midterm elections specifically in the US.
Yes, because it forms that cardinal T-square with Eris and Pluto opposing. Very, very prominent. Yeah, especially for Pluto and Leo generation. Back when I was a hippie, I signed petitions in March for free women's freedom, women's rights, and the rights over their own bodies. So yeah, it's very, very what I want to say, not exciting, but a lot of women very up in arms normally, but especially those of us that lived for 20 some years with the government ruling our body and 50 years with the government not ruling our body. And now this happened. So there's some really upset women.
Well, it is misogyny, isn't it? It's very, yeah, exactly. It's getting at women. It's wow.
I think that on this Mars retrograde opposition,
Yeah.
specifically in the US, whoever gains control of the House or the Senate or gubernatorialships or states attorneys or Secretary of States, we're going to have the opposite side is going to be up in arms on both the left and the right. To me, this is what the whole Mars retrograde on the natal US Mars is going to be bringing in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
yeah, go ahead.
litigation. And I'm kind of curious to see what we do in regards to the Supreme Court as a country.
Yes.
When you think about 250 years ago, you know, and the Bill of Rights, and how many times we've made amendments to the Constitution. I'm not really in favor of a convention of states because it could go too wild and, you know, manipulations and things changing. But to bring about constitutional amendments that have to be ratified, I think that's something we'll see as Pluto moves into Aquarius, you know, the rest of this decade. And this could be the starts of the conversations towards the end of this year, again, both left and right.
I've heard,
all those old laws we're looking at. Yeah.
I've heard a couple lawyers saying that to go in and take away one of our rights, you know, take away the right to our own body or whatever, but to take away that amendment from the Constitution is illegal.
It should be, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I've had a couple lawyers have said that it's actually illegal. They could take away the First Amendment. They could take away anything they want now because they set a precedent.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So, and it's
That's it.
funny, and yeah, and then Mars in the seventh house, that is Libra's house, that's law. And that's more family law than international law, which is Sagittarius. So yeah.
Yeah. Still cooking. And what about this war thing looming? You know, what about that? I mean, as I say, I think the Pluto shows that heading towards the South Node, but what do you think?
I have hope that the United States has exhausted their warmongering.
But it's Putin who's it's
I
his
know, I know. Maybe I
think
can give Donald Trump credit for one thing. He got NATO to step up to the plate.
Yeah. I just wonder with NATO, it's a shame I couldn't get the chart up, but looking at it, it has a Sun-Neptune opposition in Aries, of course, to Libra. And it also has Jupiter at the end of Capricorn. So that's gonna sort of, Pluto is coming up to its Jupiter. It's showing a lot that it's going to get challenged more and more, and it's not backing off. And I'll have to see if I can get that next time. But yeah, so I wonder with NATO's way of thinking, it seems like their laws maybe should have been looked at. I mean, they formed in 1949, and since then Russia did, you know, the USSR did fall, but they didn't seem to check, you know, maybe NATO should have changed at that point. You know, we're talking about change and old laws. Maybe they should have said, okay, you know, USSR has fallen, maybe NATO should not have the stance that it still has. And, you know, it seems like there might have been mistakes made there that no one's really admitted to. I mean, Europe certainly would need its defenses, but Europe just went under the umbrella of America in NATO, didn't build up its own defenses very much at all. And so it's left itself vulnerable. It can't actually make any decisions autonomously, except for America, which is fine. You know, it's good they're together. On the other hand, it might have been the very thing that started it, that actually provoked, you know, I'm not saying Putin didn't want to start it, he did. And he actually used NATO as an excuse, I think, to do what he wanted to do anyway. He used their rules.
Found your chart. I found your chart,
Yeah,
Michaela.
I have to find it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I just did the Sun Mars opposition again. So I've not looked at Natal's chart. The other chart that I had in reserve for today is the Federal Reserve chart, because that's quite interesting and very activated over the next 6 months as well. But I want to just take a moment to
All activated, isn't it?
glance at this chart. Yeah, what's not? Yeah. Oh, so we got the moon in Gemini. So, and Mars goes retrograde at 2537 Gemini.
And there's Uranus right with it.
So you've got the Mars retrograde, pulling in the activation, and it goes direct at 8 degrees, 8 minutes, January 12th. So
Mm.
we've got Mars right in there being very active. Hey, Pluto return. It's quite possible or not Pluto return. It's quite possible that Pluto is going to be over that natal Jupiter for natal 5 times as it goes
5
to
times?
retrograde cycles. Yeah.
God.
So
Yeah.
that could,
So,
Finland and Sweden have just, Turkey is not going to object anymore. And so what will happen? Will it eventually lead to Ukraine being able to come in, which will really, piss off somebody that isn't, not that he isn't already.
well,
But,
if there's anything Ukraine to come in. I
There
mean,
again, look at that house of open enemies.
right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
This
and all that. Yeah,
NATO,
all that in Aries. My
Yeah.
God.
Eris
Yes.
and
And,
Mars conjunct.
Yes. Yep.
and
Yep.
then that Saturn
Eris.
Pluto conjunct. It's a wide. Well, I mean, it's not a conjunction, but it's it's Saturn Pluto in Leo. Saturn in the 12th. Leo.
Yeah, but if
11th.
you look at the 7th there for the chart of NATO, I mean, you've got Eris and Mars and Venus and
Right.
Mercury. They're all
Yes. Aries.
conjunct, house of open energy.
And looking ahead, you'll have, Neptune goes into Aries 2025.
Yeah.
So I would expect over the next few years, we'll, continue to see, Jupiter. Jupiter is still going to have, several more months in Aries to really instigate, growth and expansion.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes,
Mhm.
it's volatile, isn't it? I mean that, and also, I mean, Uranus has just squared the Pluto in Leo, and it's it must be heading towards the midpoint of Saturn Pluto. So interesting. I mean, all those eclipses and the nodes too are going to pick up that Saturn, the Pluto, and then the Saturn.
Mhm.
So, I think it's and obviously, it's heading. I think it's heading for war. I think there seems to be an old mirroring, as I said before, of the Second World War when Pluto went into Leo, 0 degrees Leo. It went 3 times. It started ingressing Leo in 1937, October. Yeah, 1937. Then it did it again in August 1938. And for the last time, it went in June 1939. And then obviously, it was, then it was what the war started. And we have followed the pattern with Uranus, with other planets as well, that seem to be mirroring what happened then. And there was a strange thing, actually, I noticed with the eclipse at the end of April, 30th of April, that eclipse at 10 degrees Taurus was actually absolutely square. And that was one of the things that I thought looked very dangerous, because it squared World War II actually ended with Pluto at 10 degrees Leo, but it ended with the Sun conjunct Pluto when the bombs were dropped. So what I thought was, that's going to come into our psyche again. And it has. It actually came in right on the eclipse, the eclipse, the solar eclipse on the 30th of April. So, I mean, it's like, it's bringing it back up. It's like, we can't sweep that under the carpet either. And we can't go on with, now we're going to make more nuclear bombs. Great. When we should have been decreasing them and focusing on climate change. But now it's like more of what we should have moved on from. But it's though we have to get this out of our psyche before we can move on. And we obviously haven't. And now we've got to confront it again, or it's confronting us. And it certainly is, isn't it? Yeah.
I would say, because you live in France, you probably hear the news a lot differently than we do. I mean, you're closer to having your oil and gas cut off from Russia and, not only having to look at how are we going to protect ourselves, but how are we going to, keep warm in the winter.
Exactly.
And so in the US, we have so many political issues going on that Ukraine's still in the news, but it's almost like it's taken a back seat over here already.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, that's bound to happen. I mean, but, keeping an eye on it. I mean, today, Putin actually said that the Iron Curtain has just dropped again. So it's like and NATO is on alert for danger. So it is going to affect us all. Yeah, I mean, there are lots of things on the home fronts. I mean, there is in France and there's in England and but we can't let that overshadow, because the main point is, this brewing war that could affect, it is already affecting us all, because it's affected the energy, the oil, the grain, the food supplies, the food chains, everything.
Yeah.
And it's going to more and more. And so we can't turn away. It's the same thing. It's like, we can't turn away from these problems or pretend that, we lived with that nuclear bomb thing for years and sort of stuck our heads in the sand, but it's a horrible thing to live with. And really, which should never have been developed. And it only was because of the Nazis and the race and everything. But it's like, it was like a fate. Humankind had to do this. They had to develop this thing. And it was good we got it first, but on the other hand, we're still stuck with it. And now it's raised its ugly head again to say, what you going to do? Because this isn't going away, and we can't move on to that better world. As you said, the next generation is going to create, but first we have all this mess to clear up. It's a hell of a mess, but we've got to do it, and we've got to see that it will work. We will clear it, but we have to address these things first. And that's one of the major ones. We cannot destroy it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of paying attention to time. We started a little late. My apologies for everybody with me and my figuring out Zoom. I'm going to have to brush up a little bit more on that. So final comments from everybody. Would everybody like to just have a couple of minutes to say a few final comments?
Yeah, I think we have to ground ourselves, Uranus in Taurus and Pluto still in Capricorn, and we have to, with all this going on, and it is going to be a challenge, it's important for everyone, I think, as you said, Daniel, and you said, Kim, yeah, we've got to find our centers, and we've got to keep, our heads in all of this, and realize we will get through it, but and this has to happen. We've got to go through it. It's got to happen. Otherwise, we can't fix all the things that need fixing. They will get fixed, but not immediately. It doesn't happen overnight. Yeah. Find your center. Meditate every day. Set up your altar. Do what you have to do. but find, stand strong in the hurricane. Yeah. To everyone.
Anybody else?
I'd just say, here in the United States, we need everyone to vote.
Yeah, take responsibility.
So that, at these midterm elections, and now that we know as astrologers what the energy is going to be, we can manifest and send energies to what we see in the chart for that day. To the people. We need to vote, and I think the universe is speaking very loud by putting Pallas Athene and Black Moon Lilith exactly opposite Pluto squaring Eris at the time of the elections, besides everything else that's happening in that chart, but the feminine part.
Yeah, it's the goddess, isn't it? It's the great mother coming back again. But we've got to, pave the way, open the way for her.
Yeah, we got to take that our
exactly
power back, our independence back. We don't need to be owned by the government. Our female sexual organs are ours.
Exactly.
to do with correctly and not to abuse. But I mean, after having it for 50 years, it's really hard for me to think the government's controlling my female sexual organs again.
It's just very strange, isn't it? No, it's just very strange. These things that shouldn't be happening are happening all over the place. But hey, that's because they were always there under the surface still. They never went away, really. That attitude never went away. Otherwise, it couldn't resurface. So we have to now banish it for good. And that's the point. We have to banish the destruction, the greed, the lies, the hypocrisy, the authoritarianism, and create that Aquarian world. And at least kick it off, and the generation can do it somewhere in another universe. It's already happened, right? So, but we still have to do the work.
Anybody else? Do we still have Mr. Daniel?
No,
I think
Daniel had to sign off, as did Nura.
Sure. Well, there's an old African proverb that I've always liked. When you pray, stomp your feet.
Yeah.
So that means you can have the prayer, but it has to be joined with action.
Yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
And I think that's what all this energy is motivating us to do, or forcing us to do. We are, all going to have action following through with whatever we believe and think.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
All right, well, I'm going to then be conscious of time and close this down. And one more time, thank you to Sue and Robin for organizing everything for us. And thank you to everybody who's participated. And thanks to everybody who listens into the future. When you pray, stomp your feet. Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Kim Marie, for
Thank you.
wonderful
Thanks, Kim.
job of moderating.
And I'll figure out how to get my photo up, okay?
Okay.